and most people would have agreed that he was handsome. Business, he said almost proudly. Vicotech, victory, salvation for every human being struggling with the agonies of chemotherapy and cancer. The agent handed Peter his passport, and Peter picked up his bag and walked outside to find a taxi. It was a gloriously sunny June day, and with nothing left to do in Geneva, Peter had come to Paris a day early. He loved it here, and it would be easy to find something to do, even if it was just a long walk along the Seine. Or maybe Suchard would agree to meet him sooner than he'd planned, even though it was Sunday. It was still early in the day, and he hadn't had time to call Suchard yet. Although Suchard was very French, very serious, and more than a little rigid, Peter was going to call him from the hotel and see if he was free and willing to change their meeting. Peter had learned to speak some French over the years, although he conducted all of his business with Suchard in English. Peter Haskell had learned a lot of things since he left the Midwest. It was obvious, even to the customs man at Charles de Gaulle, that Peter Haskell was an important man of considerable intelligence and sophistication. He was cool and smooth and strong, and had an air of assurance about him. At 44, he was the president of one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. He was not a scientist, but a marketing man, as was Frank Donovan, the chairman. And somewhat coincidentally, 18 years before, Peter Haskell had married Frank's daughter. It hadn't been a smart move on his part, or a calculated one. In Peter's eyes, it had been an accident, a quirk of fate, and one which he had fought against for the first 6 years he knew her. Peter didn't want to marry Kate Donovan. He didn't even know who she was when they met, when she was 19 and he was 20, at the University of Michigan. At first, she was just a pretty blonde sophomore he met at a mixer. But after 2 dates, he was crazy about her. They'd been going out for 5 months before someone made a crack and suggested that he was a hell of a smart guy for going out with pretty little Katie. And then he'd explained it. She was the sole heiress to the Wilson Donovan fortune, the biggest pharmaceutical firm in the country. Peter had been incensed, and he raged at Katie for not telling him with all the furor and naivete of a boy of 20. "How could you? Why didn't you tell me?" he stormed at her. "Tell you what? Was I supposed to warn you who my father was? I didn't think you'd care." She'd been desperately hurt by his attack, and more than a little frightened he'd leave her. She knew how proud he was, and how poor his parents were. He had told her that only that year they'd finally bought the dairy farm where his father had worked all his life. It was mortgaged to the hilt, and Peter was constantly worried that the business would fail, and he'd have to give up school and go home to Wisconsin to help them. "You knew perfectly well I'd care. What am I supposed to do now?" He knew better than anyone that he couldn't compete in her world, that he didn't belong there and never would. And Katie could never live on a farm in Wisconsin. She had seen too much of the world, and she was far too sophisticated, even if she didn't seem to know it. The real trouble was that he felt he didn't belong in his own world most of the time either. No matter how hard he tried to be one of them back home, there was always something different and much more big city about him. He had hated living on a farm when he was a kid, and dreamed of going to Chicago or New York and being part of the business world. He hated milking cows and stacking bales of hay and endlessly cleaning manure out of the stables. For years after school, he had helped his father at the dairy farm he ran, and now his father owned it. And Peter knew what that would mean. Eventually, he would have to go home when he finished college and help them. He dreaded it, but he wasn't looking for an easy out. He believed in doing what you were supposed to do, in living up to your responsibilities and not trying to take any shortcuts. He had always been a good boy, his mother said, even if it meant doing things the hard way. He was willing to work for everything he wanted. But once Peter knew who Katie was, being involved with her seemed wrong to him. No matter how sincere he was, it looked like an easy way out, a quick trip to the top, a shortcut. No matter how pretty she was, or how in love with her he thought he might have been, he knew he couldn't do anything about it. He was so adamant about not taking advantage of her that they broke up about 2 weeks after he had found out who she was, and nothing she said to him changed that. She was distraught, and he was far more upset over losing her than he ever told her. It was his junior year, and in June he went home to help his father in Wisconsin. And by the end of the summer, he decided to take a year off to help him get the business off the ground. They'd had a hard winter the year before.